Hi everyone. Welcome to the second orientation session of the full application submission for the Dream for Health Call for Proposals 2026. I am John, Communication and Events Officer of the C-Dream program, and I would be moderating today's session. First things first, I would like to welcome our principal investigators, representative of research offices, and co-principal investigators in this town hall. We would like to congratulate you for being able to push through to the second stage of this funding call. Now let's proceed to the discussion of the agenda. So today I would be reminding you of the few housekeeping rules. Then we would proceed to the proper discussion proper, divided into two parts. First is to what to prepare for your full application, and the second thing is on how to manage the application portal. Then we would proceed to the moderated question and answer and some closing reminders. Now, how do you engage in this town hall? You could, in the entirety of the session, you can use the Q&A panel on the top right of the top part of your screen. Then you could use it to submit your questions or comments. And participants may send questions at any time, including during the discussion session. If you see questions that you would like to resonate or you agree with, you can click the upvote function or clicking the little upward arrow in the questions posted. A representative of the C-Dream team will address the questions in the Q&A panel as well as during the Q&A session. And if any questions are not answered, we would raise this to our session for the moderated Q&A. Now, to give you an idea first on what would happen in the coming months, in this funding call, let me call on our head of program, Mr. Ansgar Schaefer.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, John, for the kind introduction, and welcome to everyone joining us here this afternoon. I hope everyone had a good start to their week, and I can see we are joined by 40 participants now, which is great. Before I'm starting to talk about the rough timeline, I also wanted just to take a minute to say thank you to everyone who joined the call for proposals. It was a very, very competitive process. We received nearly 300 preliminary proposals, of which we shortlisted 40. So for everyone who's here today, a big thank you and preliminary congratulations from our side for being part of this. Yeah, thank you very much. So before we go into the main points of the session, which John alluded to, is to talk about the full application form as well as the process to filling out the full application. I just wanted to do a quick recap around the timeline for our funding call, as well as the evaluation criteria and overall what we're looking for in the full application, which then builds the basis for and the reasoning behind why the full application form looks how it currently looks like. So most importantly, where we are now is the full application window is open and it will close on 10th of July at midnight or just before midnight. So the 10th of July, 11:59 is the application window will close. After this, applications, full proposals will go into peer review, culminating in a panel interview in mid-October. This panel interview will be preferably hosted in Bangkok. We will invite all proposals that have been submitted, and we will invite all PIs and co-PIs to join this panel interview in person, and the costs for this will be covered by our program. The key is that we want to give everyone the chance to present their proposal in the best way possible in front of our selection and evaluation panel, and I think in person is the best way to do it. We'll then look to make a funding decision by end of November as a result of the outcomes of the panel interview, some due diligence and eligibility screening processes. So this is how the rest of the year basically will look like. And now I would like to segue into and a little refresher around our evaluation criteria. The reason why we put this at the beginning of this orientation session here is because this is the main structure on reasoning on why our full application form of which the different areas we are asking and I think this then gives a nice red line on how the full application process looks like, and potentially some more inspiration on what information is required and what we are looking for. So generally, CDREAM is structured around 5 domains that reflect our broader ambitions of CDREAM, the program. First one is in generating impactful research, strengthening leadership and talent, and fostering equitable regional collaboration, as well as strengthening research ecosystems. And the last one is on ensuring operational feasibility. So the latter two will be on the next slide. And the first domain, and which is the most obvious one, is generating impactful research. In this area, we are looking for proposals that address important national and regional health challenges and fill meaningful gaps in current evidence and scientific understanding. So strong applications will demonstrate scientific quality through rigorous methodologies, relevant innovation, ethical and interdisciplinary approaches, and a clear consideration of applicability within low resource settings. We are also looking for realistic impact strategies and pathways through which research will contribute to policy, practice, future research, or broader societal impact. The second domain focuses on nurturing leadership and research talent. So we are looking for proposals, and we will give you space to explain further how you will actively contribute to developing research leaders, strengthening regional scientific networks, and creating meaningful long-term research opportunities. Strong applications should demonstrate comprehensive approaches to research capacity strengthening across individuals, institutions, and the wider ecosystem. This includes mentorship, research management, organizational leadership, grantsmanship, and engagement policy processes, and much more. So not only individual researchers, but also the strengthening the capacity of the ecosystem in which research happens. The third domain is fostering regional collaboration and program governance. Here we are looking for equitable and meaningful partnerships across the consortium, particularly in relation to participation, decision-making, governance, and resource allocation for lower middle-income countries and partners in these countries. Strong applications should demonstrate transparent and sustainable collaboration models with clearly defined roles, institutional commitment, and practical approaches to stakeholder engagement, coordination, and technology transfer. Our fourth domain is strengthening research ecosystems. We are looking for proposals that strengthen institutional capabilities, research culture, infrastructure, and long-term ownership within the consortium, while also contributing to wider national and regional research ecosystems. The strong applications should demonstrate commitments to ethical research practices, integrity, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We are also looking for clear and fair approaches to output and data management, including openness, quality, transferability, and data sovereignty consideration. And the final domain is qualifications and operational feasibility. So we are here looking for consortia with the necessary expertise, the regional understanding, and management experience to successfully deliver large-scale collaborative research programs. Strong applications here should demonstrate appropriate team composition, realistic and equitable resource allocation, and credible approaches to implementation, risk management, monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and adaptation throughout the project lifecycle. So this is the background, and the next segment, when we talk and look into the full application form, I think will give you a very clear idea on how these selection and evaluation criteria will trickle down into the different areas and sections of this full application form. But back to you, John.
Thank you, Ansgar, for that very concise discussion on the timeline and the components on how we are going to evaluate all of the proposals submitted to Dream for Health. All of this are published on our websites if you want to read about it more. And let's go on now to the preparation for the full application. And I don't want to preempt anything, but we are going to be covering a lot for this stage of the proposal. So to kick off the discussion, let me call back again Ansgar Schaefer.
Okay, thanks very much. And yeah, so I'll talk about a bit further about what you need to prepare and what we are asking for in the full application. And overall, we have 19 sections in this full application form, which I'm aware is quite a lot. And we are also realizing that we are asking for quite a lot of information. But this is necessary for us then and for the expert reviewers, evaluators to identify the strongest proposals. So please bear with us when it comes to filling out the full application. And I also want to mention that now, since we have narrowed down our 40 candidates for full application, we are at your full disposal in supporting you throughout until the deadline. And if you have any questions, concerns with filling out the application form, you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to us directly. We are at your full support for this. So we have 19 different sections. The first one is the application summary. So based on your preliminary application, we try to carry over as much information into your full application already. So when you go to the application portal and open your application, which I'll walk you through later in a bit, you will see that there's already pre-filled information based on what you have submitted in the preliminary application, which of course doesn't mean that you cannot change any information anymore, but so you do have the option to edit any pre-existing information, except for certain key fields such as the lead organization. So the application summary, chapter section number 1, is mainly carried forward from your preliminary application. For the applicant details, here we are asking and expecting information around the individuals involved in the research and the activities. So information on the PIs, deputy PIs, co-PIs. So the CV, which you have already provided in the preliminary application. Again, this information is carried forward. But we have a few more questions around the salary funding sources of these individuals, as well as more written explanation and description of the past research and research environment contributions, including any generation of knowledge that the individual has contributed to, the development of others, and the supporting of the wider research community. So looking at your past contributions to the research ecosystem, basically. We are also asking 2 questions on how each individual will contribute not only to the research, but also to the consortium work. So there's space for this. Section number 3 looks at consortium collaboration. So if you consider section number 2, the individual level, section number 3 is the institutional level. So here we are giving space for you to describe the collective experience and capabilities of your consortium, whether it's multi-country research experience, capacity building, regional health research experience, expertise, or research culture and equity. We're also looking for, again, forward specific details on how each consortium member will contribute to the proposed activities. So what is your collaboration approach? What is your approach to resource sharing and institutional capacity building among your consortium members? One thing I should highlight probably is that the slides are not exhaustive of the full application form. What we've done here is to highlight key areas and give an overall description, but please look into the full application form template that we've provided, as well as the full applicant guideline, which is quite long and intensive, but includes all the information. And you'll find how the full application looks like there. Section number 4 is the research proposal, which is the core of the proposal, of course. Here we have 4 very large sections, and comparative to the preliminary application, we've given much more space, naturally. But I should highlight here that these limits are maximum limits. It does not mean that you have to exactly put in 19,500 words. You don't need to fully exhaust these limits. We just set these intentionally very high to give you all the space you need to describe your research, your proposal, your approach in the best way you want. But there's no expectation to make use of all limits that we have put there. So here under 4, we are asking for the proposal summary. We're asking for some background and the problem statement, the aims and objectives, as well as your approach of research activities and outputs, which includes, of course, methodology. And here, provide as much detail as you feel necessary. We've given you the space, and this is really where you can demonstrate and explain the research proposal in all the detail you want and need. Section number 5 and 6 are optional if your research proposal includes research involving humans or research involving animals. So if that's the case, there's some additional questions that you will be asked in terms of providing information, whether your proposal involves human participants or human biological material, as well as more space to include information on clinical trials, etc. We have developed and published a guideline on this, as well as for research involving animals, and we'll publishing more guidelines over the next days and weeks related to each chapter of our full application. So what that also means is that there is certain information which could fit under section number 4, research proposal, but explicitly information around clinical trials and research involving humans or research involving animals, please place this in section number 5 or 6 respectively. Section number 7 looks at research management and infrastructure. Here, if you have activities and you have costed for, support towards either staffing that will support research management or infrastructure to support research management, please elaborate here. And I hope we made it very clear that we are very supportive of this. From the very beginning, we don't want to finance and fund only research, but we want to help build overall research management capacity, capabilities, and research infrastructure. So if there's anything that is required for you in terms of resources to make sure that the research is done the best way possible, and you need support structures in your institutions around this, here would be the space to elaborate. So if you have additional staff, for example, finance, research support, or evaluation staff plan, please provide a staffing plan here, as well as any physical resources for research management that you are suggesting. What this means is we have a space for a written explanation on how the staff supports the successful delivery of the research, or how new physical or digital resources will complement or build on existing infrastructure. The goal here is to then clearly identify where are the current gaps, why you need these additional resources and staffs, where the unmet needs are, and how it would then support the successful delivery of your research. Section number 8 looks at research outputs management. Here we are asking for an overview of your output management plan with details on how you will manage data and software outputs, research materials, publication, how you will publish your outputs, how you will manage risk of research misuse, what additional resources and costs you are requesting for this, as well as you will handle IP. Again, here we have already one guideline published on how to prepare the output management plan, which is available on our website. Section number 9 looks at research training and development. Previously, I shared this is one key domain that we are looking for and will evaluate based on. So here, if you have any research training development activities planned, we are asking for details on your approach to develop research talent and leadership. And it allows you to give details in a quantitative way and qualitative way on your planned trainings, whether these are formal training programs such as master's, PhD, postdoc fellowships, or other fellowships, based to specify project-specific skills trainings which you have planned, or career-based continual professional development for researchers, or professional training and capacity development for research support staff. That doesn't mean, I said or, doesn't mean you need to choose one or the other. Ideally, you'll make use of what you have and you build a comprehensive throughout capacity for research and research support. Section number 10, I think quite straightforward, looks at timetable and milestones. Here we are expecting a breakdown of key milestones with the description categories and expected delivery dates. We did a brief survey after the preliminary application was done, and we received some feedback that it might have been quite tedious to fill in the individual fields in our application portal. So for the milestones, while this has not changed, please only fill in key, very significant milestones in this table. And we are asking you to upload a Gantt chart within the application form. So you can drop a file there. And we are also on our website and in the previous communication, we have provided a template for Gantt chart, which you may use, but this is optional. You can use a Gantt chart form or template that you are more familiar with or you think works better for you. So section number 11 looks at the consortium budget. Here we have three bigger sections. One is entering a budget summary into the application portal. This is quite similar to the preliminary application, but it would include more detailed budget for each year across consortium members. So previously in the preliminary application form, you just have the overall budget for 5 years, while now we are asking you to just provide budget per cost category, per consortium member on an annual basis. So this might be a little bit tedious, but I think it's manageable. And then the second step would be to please upload the completed full application budget template. Again, you can drop the Excel file in the application form there. And we have shared this template with you previously. One question that we have received, which we will do, is there are certain consortium. I'll get there on the next slide when we look at the template directly, and then I'll explain further. So upload the full application budget template in this section. And then also, if you're requesting costs for overheads, please upload a letter of justification for the overheads you're requesting. And just as a reminder, all costs must be in USD. So let's have a brief look at the the budget template that we have provided and shared. So in the template, you'll see a row of several sheets here, starting with instructions. Starting with the instructions on the left, which should be all the information you require. And we are also linking to our eligible cost guidelines, which will explain and show you which costs go into which area and what costs are eligible, what costs are ineligible specifically. So after the instruction slide, you'll be asked to fill in a very high level, like not that many information around the application detail, mainly helping us link to your application ID and the PI name, and some general information. And then we have one tab for the budget narrative, where we are expecting you to explain a little bit more on how you arrived at the numbers that you're proposing, what the justifications are, potential budgetary risks going forward in terms of being under overspending, and should certain items increase in price, or maybe your research needs a larger sample size, so you need to purchase more materials or do larger surveys. So these kind of budget considerations. Now there's one tab which is consortium budget overview, which will be completely auto-populated from the budget tabs for the consortium lead and each individual consortium member. So in the tab for the consortium lead, you would put in enter the budget required for the consortium lead for the full duration, in detail with each cost category mentioned. And on the next slide, I'll talk about what costs go into which category here. So each consortium member, including the lead, would fill in information in their separate sheet. And this would then auto-populate the consortium budget overview and give you the detailed insight into your total consortium budget. Just one clarification, there's one line for sub-awards, which also will be auto-filled and auto-populated, which is basically what we consider the funds going from the lead to the consortium members. So the sub-awards are under the consortium lead budget. Of course, there's no double counting, but this is for us as an internal identifier to know how much the funding going to the lead, and then serving as a hub and spoke model to distribute the funding to the consortium members. And what I mentioned, what I wanted to address previously, so in the template we have shared, we accounted for up to 6 consortium members and 1 lead, so 7 organizations total. There are certain cases where a consortium consists of more than 7 organizations, which we are tracking, and we will be sharing updated budget template with those consortia over the coming days. So that you don't need to customize it yourself, but we can add a few more consortium members for you in the template. Now, in terms of which costs go into which, again, I'll mainly would refer to our eligible cost guideline, which is quite comprehensive. But we have established certain subcategories within each main cost category for you as a directional guidance. So under staff costs, we have categorized into basic salary and employer contributions, then visa, work permit, or medical support, disability-related support, removal and relocation, as well as collaborator expenses. You'll also see that each budget line basically has one item at the end, which is other costs. So we have one line for other staff costs, other travel and subsistence costs, which should give you the sufficient flexibility to account for cost categories or subcategories, which we haven't spelled out directly here. So under travel and subsistence, we'll have travel costs, education and parent responsibility costs, and subsistence per diem. Under materials and consumables, here again, materials, consumables that are necessary for carrying out your research activities. Under equipment, we have equipment costs, maintenance, and computing costs. For training and development, here we'll split this into two. For continuing professional development, which is basically the short or more informal trainings, as well as master PhD fellowship, which is the more formal training and development programs. We have the category for direct research, which includes costs related to animal research, clinical epidemiological costs, field work, subject and volunteer expenses, communication devices, data management, ethical approval, equipment access charges, facility access charges. Outreach and dissemination relates to all costs for any communication activities, whether it's publication, public engagement, patient involvement, community involvement, conferences, so hosting of events, meetings for dissemination, anything that has the purpose to increase public visibility or engagement and involvement in the research or the distribution of the project results among the relevant stakeholders. And then we have one big category under other costs, which is a breakdown of the basically any other costs that don't fall into any of the other categories which are still eligible. So, for example, this could be consultancy fees or costs related to monitoring, evaluation, learning, or health and safety, and so on. So put those here. And then the last category is overheads. Here, a reminder: a maximum of 20% of the total direct cost is allowable to cover any costs related to overheads which are not already covered under direct costs. So this was budget. It was section number 11. We have still a few more to go. And section number 12 is any additional support opportunities. And here I'm actually very happy that we are able to announce one additional support opportunity from the National Research Foundation Singapore and the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, or A*STAR Singapore, which is the Singapore Southeast Asian Fellowship. So as part of your CDREAM application, you do have the opportunity to apply for up to 2 CSEF fellowships as part of your Dream for Health CDREAM application. This means this would be on top of what you're already, the resources you're requesting and what you're proposing, and this would be awarded in addition to a CDREAM award. I should mention in the beginning that CDREAM award is not contingent on getting the award for the CSEF fellowship, but other way around, to get the CSEF fellowship through CDREAM, you would require to receive the CDREAM award. Of course, otherwise it would be fully at the discretion of A*STAR to award you the fellowship should you not receive the CDREAM award. So what is CSEF? CSEF provides fellows with up to 2 years of support, including salary, living allowance, and airfare. You have 2 different modalities under CSEF, either supporting researchers from Southeast Asia to work on projects at Singapore host institutions, or to support Singapore-based researchers to work on projects at host institutions in Southeast Asian countries outside of Singapore. What this means is who can apply. CSEF is open to PhD holders only, and researchers who will be part of a CDREAM consortium and are a named individual. Named individual means deputy PI, co-PI, or collaborator. We have not included PIs here because I think for obvious reasons the PI most likely needs to stay at the lead organization and also might be at a senior level. So, but it needs to be a named individual as part of your CDREAM application to receive the CSEF fellowship. And it is eligible for consortia with a Singaporean institution. But this does not mean a Singaporean institution only as lead or member, but it can also be a collaborator. It just means that the Singaporean institution needs to be a named lead, consortium member, or collaborator within your proposal. In terms of thematic focus, generally the research under CSEF must align with the research proposal in your respective consortium. It must fit in the narrative. and must make sense to contribute to the consortium work that you're proposing. I mentioned within your preferred application, you may apply for up to 2 CSAP awards. So you can name 2 individuals who you want to propose and apply for these CSAP awards within your application. The way it works is within our application portal, there in section number 12, there is a space for you to just upload and drop the CSAP application form. If you scan the QR code, you'll go to a page with a bit much more elaboration, and there's a separate CSAP application form as well as requirement to submit your CV. I know there's a lot of duplicative information there, but because of several decision-making process involvement, we require the CSAP application and the CV and a passport page, as well academic transcript and degree certificates in a separate form. So apologies for the little bit of extra effort it requires, but I hope and I'm sure it will be worth it. So last part on the full application here, the last few sections is number 13. We are looking for your approach to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So we give you space to outline how you will monitor your activities, how you will evaluate outcomes, and how you will engage stakeholders to assess effectiveness and conduct learning activities. We are asking you to detail your theory of change, ideally through a diagram, but you can also provide us a written explanation of your theory of change and a logical framework. For this, again, we are providing a template you may use, but you can also use your own template for your log frame. And very important is that at this point in time, we are not expecting the log frame to include any indicators. We are really just interested in seeing on how your proposed activities will lead to outcomes, will contribute to your activities will lead to outputs, which will contribute to outcomes, which will then create larger impact. So this is the level of information we're looking for. We are also asking you to detail your approach to ensure equity, diversity, and inclusion across the design, implementation, and the governance of your consortium and the activities. Section number 14 looks at public and policy engagement. Here we are giving you the space to detail your engagement plan with public and non-academic communities, as well as policymakers at a local, national, regional, or global level, including any plans on how they could inform, use, and find value in your research. Number 15, section number 15 looks at your risk evaluation. We are asking you to describe your approach to identifying, assessing, and managing project risks, including key processes, responsibilities, and mechanisms for ongoing risk monitoring and escalation. So for this, we are asking you to upload a risk register or something similar. Again, we provide you with a template, which you may use, but if you have something that works better for you, feel free to use that one. Number 16, asking for environmental sustainability and information on how you will minimize environmental impacts across activities and outline your practices within your consortium and the methodologies you selected to do so. Number 17 is an optional section where you can suggest reviewers to be part of the review process that are suitable, of course, provided there's no conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Number 18 is just if there's any change to your consortia constellation or any updates on information required for us to assess your eligibility. This is where you need to make any updates. Again, the information is pre-filled from your preliminary application, but there might be changes, so please update those. And then number 19, you're familiar with, is just certification of all the correctness of the information that you have provided and that everyone who's named in the proposal has agreed for them to be part of the proposal. I'll leave this on the screen very briefly. This is a summary which you can find on our website, in our guidance materials, in the full applicant guideline too, on basically a checklist on what documents are needed which documents might be uploaded as part of the application. So again, we are asking for updated letters of support for the PI, deputy PI, and for the co-PIs. then so the reason for this is that now for the full proposal you will have more detail and more space probably to elaborate how the institutions will support the individuals as well as be part of the consortium. And then, yeah, overall, I think I've covered pretty much all of this. There's a checklist that you can refer to when drafting your application. This, as well as all the other guidelines and information, will be published and is published on our website. I mentioned we'll keep updating and publishing more guidelines that will maybe, I hope, hopefully help you fill out the application and help you understand how we think across these different sections. So please do regularly check our website for any updates. We'll announce those on our front page should we publish new materials. I think I'll pause here. I see one question in chat already, which maybe I can just briefly address, which was for CSEF, whether we can apply for 2 inbound or 2 outbound or only 1 for each. So you can only apply for 2 fellowships, but it doesn't have to be 1 for each. So it could be 2 outbound or 2 inbound, or 1 outbound, 1 inbound. That's up to you. But you can only apply for basically 2 individuals. And with this, I'll hand it back to you, John.
Thank you, Ansgar, for the very thorough discussion of the full application form. We know that at first sight, 19 sections seems a lot and may look overwhelming, but we are hoping this would allow our applicants to really show the merit and relevance of their proposal. So in turn, we could select the best proposals out of the 40 applications. And just to echo, we prepared all of the templates for you inside our website. You can find it inside the guidelines in order for you to help to do or to accomplish each sections of the full application form. Regarding some questions, first, there are people asking for the slides. So, Dream, please allow us until tomorrow to publish a web article where you could download the presentation and the recording of the 2 sessions. We would be providing this link via email to all of our PIs and research offices. Now, Ansgar, since you mentioned that we have 40 shortlisted individuals for the full application stage, some people are asking on how many people or consortium would be funded per each thematic area out of these 40 applicants.
Thank you for the question. So we have committed to fund at least 8 consortium at the end. We have 4 thematic areas, and we are aiming to address all 4 of those. But this does not mean that we will be fund 2, basically, even spread. The final funding decision will be made mainly on the recommendations of the selection and evaluation panel, but our steering committee will take into account thematic spread as well as geographic contribution across these 8 consortia that we're looking to award. So again, that doesn't mean that it needs to be 2 for each thematic area at the end. It's what we are striving for, but it also depends on the quality of the proposals. I think it's safe to say that we want to fund at least 1 consortium within each thematic area. But besides that, there is room for deviation a little bit. So it might be 3 in infectious diseases, and 1 in strengthening health systems, or the other way around, really depending on the quality of the proposals. So we're striving for balance, but it doesn't have to be fully equal across each thematic area.
Thank you, Ansgar. Now, a question regarding the start date and end date of their project. So, they plan to start the project in March 2027. Would that be possible? Or does the project need to start in January 2027? Also, does the end date needed to be by December 2031?
So the start date does not have to be January 2027. Or we are aware that probably contracting, setup, etc. takes time. So the proposed start date does not need to be January 2027. I think you're raising a valid point, which we will update our budget template, is that then currently I think our template only runs until December 2031. So if your start date is, let's say, March 2027 and your project runs for 60 months, then yes, your project duration can be up to, in this case, end of February 2032, right? So if that would be the case, I would ask you to please reach out to us, our teams at grants@cdream.org, and we will provide you with an updated template. Generally, our recommendations would be to look for a closer start date. It doesn't have to be January, but it should also not be too late in 2027 for reasons that we are working with Welcome and we also have a certain funding duration from our side. So a start date earlier in 2027 is good. Of course, this will not influence any funding decision in the end, as long as the start date is realistic. So just to summarize, it doesn't have to be January 2027. It can be a bit later in 2027. If based on this, if you need an updated template for the budget, we will provide you with one. We'll make updates accordingly.
Thank you, Ansgar. Now regarding to composition of the team inside the consortium, can they still add a new co-investigator for this stage?
Yes, short answer, yes, you can still add new co-PIs as your proposal evolves, and maybe you from your preliminary proposal, you'll find that there are certain areas which you need more expertise in, or you just, again, your research evolves, you get new ideas, new networks, new connections. Yes, you can include more co-PIs at the full proposal stage. Just to finish this thought is, however, if you remove individuals compared from the preliminary stage compared to the full application stage, this would require some explanation and elaboration because we, of course, made our shortlisting decision based on the team constellation that you have provided.
Thank you, Ansgar. For someone is asking also for the consortium collaboration under Section 3. Is this section intended to cover organizational level collaborations, individual collaborations, or both?
So the section mainly, and maybe let me just jump back to the slide. The section mainly looks at your institutional collaboration, but of course, institutional collaboration happens through individuals. So you would have to draw the connection here. There's also a chapter later which looks at collaborators, which I acknowledge might be now a bit confusing. So the first chapter in this section is looking at your collective experience within your consortium, which naturally translates into individuals, but can represent that your consortium, your certain institutions in your consortium have a lot of experience in managing and leading multi-country research, for example, have a lot of developed capacity building programs. They have accumulated regional health research expertise as individuals, but of course, the focus here should be more on the institution and the institutions represented in your consortium. This also then reflects on how you as consortium members and the institutions will collaborate across like among each other. So what is the collaboration approach between the different institutions? What is the approach to resource sharing on an institutional level? So access to equipment, to lab, to facilities, to data, etc. And institutional capacity building. So it's more towards the institutions rather than the individuals, but again, one cannot happen without the other in this case. There's also one section below one chapter at the end, which asks for your collaborators. So you have the consortium lead, you have the consortium members, and then you have collaborators, which you can name, which you already did in the preliminary application. And collaborators are, of course, they are not fixed part and not leading parts of the consortium, but they can contribute to the activities and provide expertise, know-how, as well as support to the main individuals involved. So here you can name collaborators as whether these could be individuals, but you can also name collaborating institutions and networks that exist. So there's space for this.
Thank you. And I think it's a somehow similar confirmation regarding this. They are asking where in the application they could name members of the consortium organizations who are not co-PIs but will be supporting the project. Where can we name at least early mid-career researchers that will be supported?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. So those would be collaborators. So anyone who's part of the project but not a PI should be a collaborator. And specifically, depending on how you want to support early mid-career researchers, they should also be collaborators, and they might also be named in the training and development activities if it's relevant. It depends on how they will be involved and supported.
Thank you. Also, there is wait, let me just okay, here. So they're asking if they could upload letter of support from external collaborators in addition to letter from lead organization of consortium members.
Um, so you can, but it is not required. And so initially we also removed the in the I can share a little bit in the initial design of this form. We thought about asking for letters of support from the collaborators, but there are a lot of proposals which include a lot of collaborators. So that would be quite a significant effort on your side as well as on our side to review all of those. So it is not required or expected for you to upload letters of support from external collaborators. Um, I would leave it at this. You may upload those additional letters in any of the areas like for support, but it would not be counted as a significant, like any advantage in the evaluation. So the answer is you can, but it's not expected.
Okay, thank you. And I think we can do a last question before we proceed to the next discussion. This is a budget question for section 2 for salary funding sources in the applicant details. Should it be included primary salary source only or salary sources from all projects?
Mm, Ideally, you would paint us a complete picture of the salary sources. So from all projects, I think that would be important to then for us to when we do our cost challenge and budget review to see how the proposed staff is costed for in the proposal, as well as help us answer any potential questions in advance before we have to ask them. So ideally, be as comprehensive as possible when it comes to the salary sources.
Thank you, Ansgar, for answering these initial questions. And I would just like to remind our attendees to keep posting your questions in the Q&A, and we will go back to it later. Now, I think we should focus on the second part of the discussion, which is on how to submit this information to our C-Dream application portal. This portal is you're quite familiar with it during the prelim, but we did some upgrades to cater to particular needs for the full application. So here is Ansgar to talk about on how to manage the application portal for the full application stage.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you very much, John. And yeah, as John mentioned, I think now everyone is already familiar with the application portal and process, so it's quite similar to what you're familiar with. And before explaining or going through it in detail, I also wanted to again share my appreciation. So this platform, the application portal, has been developed newly, and we are still iron out certain quirks with the system, and we are aware that not everything is working as smooth as it might maybe it should. So thank you for your patience, and we try to improve for the full application certain areas when it comes to the application portal. But again, we have now a very focused group among the 40 full proposals. So if you run into any technical issues with the application portal, contact us directly. Also, please explore the portal in advance to make sure you're familiar with the navigation and the utilization, and you can inform us about any issues that you run into. So starting with the basics in terms of how to access your application. As the PI, you use your previous login information that you from the account that you already have created for the preliminary application form. And then you can go to applications and select the application ID, click on it, and then this will redirect you to your full application. Here, like related to the question just now, one thing you can do, on the top, you have some buttons for navigation. You'll see that you can update and add KPIs. So any information from KPIs that you submitted previously, you can update should there have been any changes, and you can also add more KPIs to your application. The reason why this is the first step is because now for the full application, you can also invite KPIs as well as guest editors onto the platform to help you edit the application, because it's quite lengthy. It's a lot of information we're asking for, as I mentioned. It is definitely, I think, helpful to have for multiple people to have access to the application and be able to edit different sections of the application, or to make just the whole process quicker and also more collaborative. So you can click on the invite KPI button, and from there you can select either individual KPIs you want to invite, or just select all KPIs that are tied to your application to invite them to edit, to help you edit and fill out the full application form. KPIs will be sent a link, which will expire in 72 hours after the email invitation is sent out. So if they don't create an account by this time, then you would have to resend the invitation. So please coordinate accordingly. You can also invite guest editors, which can help you edit the application. So for example, if there are certain support staff in your institution that can help you fill out certain areas, let's say, for example, around risk or MEL or other areas where you might want support and want guest editors, then you can invite those guest editors here. To note is that guest editors have more restrictions. So guest editors, for example, cannot access the budget section of the application, as well as, I think, information around like personal details. But all other sections should be able, I guess, editors should be able to edit. One thing that I wanted to highlight and basically take note as important is there's, on a platform like this, there's always something that can go wrong. So if you have multiple people editing at an application at the same time, please coordinate and make sure that you're saving everything regularly, and make sure double check that information is saved correctly, because we have not experienced it and it should not happen. But if people are working on the same thing at the same time, they might just be careful that everything is working correctly, and keep an eye out for this. You can also, should the for the full application, the RO account, which has approved your prelim application, is and maintains assigned to your application. If this is correct and doesn't need to change, there's nothing you need to do. But if for some reason you need to invite a new RO account to your full application, maybe it's a change in personal, change in email address, or just an approval process, then you can invite a new RO to your application. But here to notice that there's only one application can only have one RO account attached to it. So if you invite a new account, the old RO, the research office account, will lose access to the application. When it comes now to editing, I mentioned we did try to pull as much information from your prelim application to the full application. So any pre-filled fields are highlighted in light blue or green, but you can still edit those. So you'll see there's pre-populated information, but you can make changes except for certain key areas like the consortium lead or the PI. But please do check whether all information is still correct and make the certain edits and updates where necessary. The last reminder is, I think, standard but necessary. Please always make sure you click save. And if you want to continue to the next section, click save and next. There are certain mandatory fields in the application, but we did try to leave most fields as non-mandatory. that to help you with the navigation between different sections. That doesn't mean that these fields would not, or the application would not benefit from providing information in those fields. So, for example, certain chapters around the consortium activities, they are not necessarily mandatory, but of course we are expecting activities to be detailed there, but this just makes your navigation easier. So please double check before submitting the application that you have filled in information in every field that where you want to. And also for those fields, generally you need to fill in information in fields that are mandatory, of course, to move on to the next section. So this is unfortunately necessary. So, but if you want to navigate quickly, you can fill in just temporary placeholder information and then revisit that information later. But please make sure that you don't lose track of that information, and you'll update it before you want to submit the application in the final stage. So in terms of approval process, this remains the same as previously. As the PI, once you have completed your application, you have completed and filled out your proposal, you will submit your proposal for review by your research office account. This goes as usual, and you will see in the approval history whether the status of your review, and you will also, of course, get notifications whether if your research office has approved or rejected your application with comments. And but yeah, so usually then the RO would approve your proposal, and then as a preliminary application, the PI needs to submit before the deadline the proposal to CDREAM. So it's PI to RO back to PI, PI, CDREAM. I think you're all familiar with the process, of course. And then, yeah, so this would be the final submission. You'll get a check for confirmation, and then submit the application. You will receive a confirmation email, and you're also able to download the completed application as a PDF. And generally, you're able to download your application as a PDF throughout the whole application writing process. So this was a little bit like a shorter explanation. We have a full 27-page manual available on our webpage, which you please download. There's all the like specific steps and a bit more guidance on how to use the portal. And I mentioned before, please contact us, reach out to us directly if you have any issues with handling the portal. So I think back to you, John.
Thank you, Ansgar, for that discussion about the application portal. I would like to echo that this portal is quite new for our just like our program. So we would like to thank for your patience with us as we continue to make it better for everyone to use. Also, we just like Ansgar mentioned, we have a manual on our website, and we will be posting a tutorial video on how to invite guest editors and co-PIs to edit and how to submit your full application sometime this week. So make sure to also check our guidelines in the website for any updates. Now, I think we have a few questions left. So I would like to remind everyone that you could still post your questions while we have the time. Now, Ansgar, since you mentioned that some information would be carried over from the prelim application, right? So some people are asking if we can change the order of their selected thematic areas at the full application stage. For example, their first theme is infectious disease and their second theme is mental health. For the full application stage, are they allowed to switch the order of the two teams?
I would say yes, it is allowed. It would. These themes are of course not clearly separatable. We would definitely, if there's such a switch is being made, we would definitely look as whether in the preliminary applications was any thinking in terms of distributing the thematic focus to fit our eligibility and submission criteria and the limitations of proposal submissions per institution. But if there's a strong justification, and we had quite a lot of proposals which were standing between two different thematic areas, and there would be strong arguments for first theme to be one or the other, I think it's generally, it is permissible, yes.
Thank you, Ansgar, for confirming that. I think we also have a question for another changes from the prelim to full. So they're asking if they should provide explanation for replacing co-investigator of one consortium member, but from the same country.
Let me get to that question just in a second. I just wanted I forgot to mention something on the thematic area. One addition in this proposal is we are not only asking for the primary and secondary thematic area, but we're also asking could be section number 1 or maybe 2 for a detailed description and keywords of your research focus. So we're going by the online available catalog of definitions and nomenclature. And we're asking for you to provide a few more labels, which then allow us to assign the right expertise to your proposal and overall categorize the research you're proposing in. So the thematic areas are an overall guidance, and yes, it can be changed, but we are asking for more specific labels towards the research focus. Yeah, so sorry, I just wanted to mention this. I think the second question was on whether there needs to be an explanation for replacing co-PIs of one consortium member, but from the same country. That's correct?
Yes.
Yes, it does not need to be too detailed, but it would be important to address. If you just add a consortium, if you just add a co-PI, I think you can address this in the area where you describe on how that individual would contribute to the research. That's clear. But if you're replacing or removing co-PIs, then it would be great in the overall team description to at least to mention why there has been a change in staff, so it does not need to be addressed too extensively if it's for very clear reasons, but it would help us understand why you made this change in team constellation.
Thank you. Another question about flexibility or changes. So they're asking if there are any flexibility for refining to further improve the proposal in terms of the primary objectives, methodology, and others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have all the space. That's what the full proposal is for. You can adjust the title, you can adjust the duration, you can adjust the total funding requested, so the budget. You can refine and elaborate more on the methodology and all the other areas. Of course, it should be still the same proposal, right? The core of what the preliminary proposal was based on needs to continue, and the changes need to be improvements and refinements rather than a change in direction. But overall, you can do this. Absolutely.
Also, we have a question regarding can an organization be involved in more than one proposal? Since I think we have a lot of organizations who have several applications shortlisted for this stage.
Yes. So yes, you can. In the end, our limitations is that among the 8 consortia that we are awarding, one organization can only be the lead for up to 2 proposals. So up to 2 awards, and only if those 2 awards are in distinctly different thematic areas and held by different faculties. But in terms of being a consortium member across different proposals, there's no limitation. Your organization could be a lead in one proposal and a consortium member in multiple others. That is not a problem. As long as, of course, if there's a clear contribution, a clear role within the consortium, we are not limiting this.
Thank you. We have a budget question on their trainings. So they're asking on what cost could be covered for the degree-based training, such as master's, PhD, postdoc, and fellowship.
Mm-hmm. I would refer for this in detail to our eligible cost guidelines, what costs in there, but overall it could be like any fees, accommodation, travel. I would really refer to our section in our eligible cost guidelines. I wouldn't do it much justice just verbalizing it. But I think maybe one of my colleagues can link the guideline in chat. for the document, where we are specifying all costs that would be covered under degree-based training.
Thank you. Also another budget question. They are asking on how to cover the cost of non-consortium members' technical supports, such as in their case, a university in China will join their technical support. So can this be through the budget of lead country member only?
Let me briefly digest this question. And just sorry, coming back on the cost for training-based, degree-based trainings, maybe even beyond linking the eligible cost guideline, maybe someone of our colleagues can quote this part in the guideline directly in response to that question, so that we can just give you a bit more details now during the session while we look into the other questions. So on the question on how to cover the cost for non-consortium members, technical support, such as in our case, a university in China, which will join as a technical support. It depends on how this university will be engaged in your consortium. So for example, it could be a service contract, like a consultancy fee, which you can include under your budget under other costs, which of course then in the budget needs to be justified and explained. But under other costs, there could be consultancy fees. And this can be in the budget of the lead, but it could also be in the budget of the consortium members. Depends a little bit on what arrangement makes the most sense and who would be the direct issuer of this service contract towards this partner university. If you want to engage this partner through non-service provider contracts, such as awards, then they would have they would need to be a consortium member, most likely. If this is a specific case and then being a consortium member is not possible, please contact us. Again, like there's probably a few details which would be helpful for us to know about this case specifically. And then we can provide you with more guidance. But generally, if you have non-consortium members who will provide technical support, they should be ideally engaged as part of a service contract.
Thank you, Ansgar. For this question, we received 4 of them, I think. Could you please emphasize on how many proposals will be selected for this funding call?
Yeah. So right now in the full application stage, we have invited 40, and we are planning to select at least 8. I say at least because it depends a little bit on how the budget for each individual consortium, whether it's towards our maximum or whether maybe there is room to fund one additional one. But we have committed to fund at least 8 consortia. So a 20% rate from 40 to 8, which is, I think, this is quite competitive. But yeah, we're looking at 8 consortia.
I see. Someone is also asking, yes, Dream for Health call proposal is the first call of the C Dream program. So Ansgar, they're asking if you could please quickly highlight the rationale of this funding call.
Yeah, so it is our first time. That's also why I mentioned please bear with us as we learn along the way. So CDream, we have partnered with Wellcome Trust and UK FCDO, who are our main donors in the background, basically, and who have approached Semio Secretariat, which is the organization implementing CDream. And we're based here in Bangkok, but we are an intergovernmental organization in for Southeast Asia, so the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education organization. We are implementing CDream under the context that we want to create CDream as a vehicle for continuous funding for multi-country research collaboration in Southeast Asia, and specifically for research led from within Southeast Asia. So this first call, the Dream for Health call, is our proof of concept. This is where we want to demonstrate towards the funders, the research communities, and others that we can administer and run great funding calls that show the potential, the talent, the excellence of research in Southeast Asia that is worth funding, and in the end, open up the opportunity to do this continuously. So Dream for Health 2026 is our first funding call, but we are implementing this with the goal to do this multiple times. While at this point in time, we cannot confirm or commit to any future calls over the coming years, this is definitely our intention. And we're working together with our partners, our funders, whether it's nationally or internationally, to see how we can continue doing this, and of course how we can improve our processes, whether it comes from for the application, the proposal development phase, as well as supporting researchers in not only developing the proposals, but once we start our funding, how we can support you in the best we can in not conducting, but helping you implementing the research and research activities.
Thank you. We have another conceptual question. So could you please clarify the pragmatic meaning of equity and balanced budget proposal and justification among consortium members?
Yes, very good question, I think, Faisal, because there's always the debate between equity and equality, right? We do not expect that each consortium member has exactly the same amount of resources available, right? This would be equality. Every consortium member gets the equal amount of resources, which is not an expectation, but we expect equity when it comes to research distribution. So we are, by we I mean the people who will evaluate and review the proposals. We are looking whether the budget distribution is proportional and relevant to the activities that are being proposed and the context in which activities are being conducted in. So naturally, there are certain countries in Southeast Asia where implementing activities is just more expensive and therefore requires a higher budget, which would be absolutely fine if it is and drives the purpose of the proposed research and leads to great outcomes. But we are also we're also looking towards every consortium member having a significant role, leading a significant component of activities and research, and having ownership over their contribution. The key criteria for us in terms of eligibility was that every consortia must include an institution from a Southeast Asian lower middle income country. And of course, I can speak openly, there's always a risk of token inclusion when you set these hard criteria. And to avoid token inclusion, one of our evaluation criteria going forward and in the preliminary application as well is equity and balance when it comes to the budget proposal. So does every member, what I mentioned before, does every member has a significant amount of budget? Do they contribute to the research? Are partnership structures and governance established in a way where everyone has ownership, contribution, and is a valuable, active member of the consortium? I hope that gives the idea in terms of what we're looking for.
Thank you, Ansgar, for that comprehensive answer. And now, a policy-related question. Someone is asking if there is a guide on the number of talents and intellectual properties like patents expected from the project.
There's no expectations from the project. Generally, we do have a policy, and I think it's not on our website yet, but we will publish this in the coming days, is our policy around IP and intellectual property. Generally, we expect each consortium to articulate how they handle IP across the consortium members on their own individually. So that each consortium has an arrangement on how they involve IPs, patents, etc., that are being developed as or might be an outcome of the research and activities they conduct. But from our side, there's no expected numbers. But on how, in terms of how it's being handled, these look at our IP policy that will be published very, very soon.
Thank you, Ansgar. Also, someone is also asking about the policy on post-award budget flexibility and cross-subsidizing.
I maybe that person can just correct me if I'm wrong in terms of cross subsidizing. I assume means shifting between different budget categories. Is would be my assumption. If I understand it wrong, please explain further in the chat, and I'll get to it. In terms of post-award budget flexibility, is you will receive an award letter stating the amount and budget categories within the respective budget categories that you have proposed. So the budget that you're proposing is as long as it's eligible within our cost category, so as long as it's within eligible cost and stands against our cost challenge, you will be awarded the budget that you have proposed. When it comes to flexibility between budget lines, again, if I understand your question correctly, generally there is quite some flexibility to move budget between lines. There are certain core areas, of course, which like overhead is one. I think staff cost is the other, as well as a few others. Sorry, I would again, this is something that we have published in our guideline. Generally, there is flexibility. We are planning our mechanisms that we have quarterly assurance meetings with the consortium lead, where we would review the spend report and any potential exceeding of budget lines or cross-subsidizing between lines if required can be articulated and justified there. And generally, we try to be as flexible as possible while maintaining and managing our risk, of course. This is sorry for blanking a little bit on the which cost categories specifically are flexible and which are not, but we can provide this information later, and it is as well in our guidelines.
Thank you. Now a budget question again. They are asking if they could include the tax cost for the leading organization based on its country's law.
Yes. So each the proposed budget needs to be inclusive of all taxes that are applicable. You can include those. You may include these depending on how, as an organization, how you handle it. You can include those under overheads, or you may include those under other costs. But of course, yeah, if they're included under other costs, then you cannot apply any overheads on those. Yeah, but generally, the total proposed budget in your application needs to be inclusive of all anticipated taxes.
Thank you. Now this question is more related to the hub and spoke component of the consortium. They are asking if the funds are going to the lead organization or disperse or direct to each individual consortium member.
The former. So all funds from us would go to the lead organization, which is then responsible for dispersing the funds across the consortium members. In Friday's session, there was a question around whether, in case there are restrictions of the lead organization to manage and disperse funds, but there are very clearly established other mechanisms or financial management organizations that could handle this. This would be only an exception if there are regulatory issues that arise from the lead needing to disperse funds internationally. Then this needs to be indicated in the respective field in the section number, I think, 18 in our application form, with further details on how you're planning as a lead to handle this process. Generally, from our side, we want to provide the funds to the lead, and the lead is responsible for managing funds and implementation across the consortium.
Thank you. And now I only have two questions left, and it's all related to the interviews. So another person is asking on how many team members can join the face-to-face interview on the coming months.
We expect and anticipate to invite the PI and one co-PI per consortium member for the interviews. Um, as I mentioned, there are certain consortium proposals which have quite a large amount of consortium members. So this might still to be decided at some point, but our ingoing expectations is that we want to have the PI as part of the interview, as well as one co-PI per consortium member, because this is, I think, a proper representation of the partnership and also gives us more opportunity to elaborate, explain your proposal and how each consortium member contributes.
Thank you. They are also asking if do we announce and when will we announce the dates for the in-person interviews?
Yes, we'll announce this. We have not set an internal deadline for when we announce it right now. In our guidance is mid-October. So the interviews would take place in mid-October, and we're aiming for the week of the 12th to the 16th of October. There is a possibility that it might shift back 1 week, so instead of 12th to 19th. But I think we can confidently make an announcement by mid-July when the full application window has closed, and we have set up our selection evaluation process properly and have the full picture basically of the proposals we received.
Thank you. And I think that's it. We don't have any more questions in line. So I think that concludes the Q&A session of today. So Ansgar, before I let you go, do you have any last few remarks or important action points for our applicants here with us today?
Nothing in particular. I would say just again, thank you for being part of the whole process. I want to reiterate that please do reach out to us. We have two contact emails addresses. If you have questions on the full application or issues with the application portal, you can contact grants@cdream.org. If you have more general questions towards CDream, please contact info@cdream.org. Or in other cases, you can contact us through phone, phone line during working hours, of course, at our office here. So besides that, please engage early with your partners in drafting the proposal, familiarize yourself with the portal, with the different section of the application. Please be kind to us if you notice any discrepancies in terms of word counts or details between the application, the templates and the system. Notify us and we'll make corrections as quickly as possible. And yeah, overall, I wish everyone best of luck. I think it's now end of May and the mid of July will come very quickly. But yeah, we are here all the way to support you. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ansgar, for your time today. I would just like to reiterate that please do keep contact us as much as possible. Please scan the contents of the application portal so you could encounter or you could get familiarized as well as early as possible in the application portal and all of the guidelines posted. We will keep as a team. We will keep on posting new guidelines for you. So make sure to keep our to always check our website updates. And just to lastly, no, we would be providing you the PowerPoint and the recording of the today's session and the last week session via email tomorrow through a web article. That's it. Thank you all for the principal investigators, representative of research offices, and co-PIs here who dedicated their Monday afternoon or morning to some with us. So we understand that this is the trying times for the for the next coming months, and we hope to give you guidance as much as possible. And yeah, thank you, and we will see you again.